Our speaker has been recognized as developing some of the most successful real estate offices and agents in the country. He served as senior vice president of 2 national real estate firms. For the past few years, he has been working with local law firm to negotiate short sales on behalf of homeowners. He's recognized as a leading authority in the art of negotiation and is often sought after as a lecturer for his seminars on negotiating a successful real estate transaction. Coming to us with 37 years of real estate experience, help me welcome Greg Joseph.
Thank you. After that introduction, I think I'm leaving. I'm very impressed with what's in this room. The gentleman in the back, I'd like to talk to you before you leave. I mean, I had no idea that there was that kind of a service available, and that's something that I run across all the time. So I'd really love to talk to you. Since we have most of my lectures are to real estate agents dealing with residential properties. So I'll try to broaden it a bit, and I have some notes that we'll pass out in a few minutes to give you some of the concepts that you can use in any situation. But first, I've got a definition up here, and I have it written down in the notes. It says that negotiation is a process where 2 or more parties engage in face-to-face discussions to arrive at a mutually satisfactory agreement on the issues or problems at hand. And that's all it is. It's a discussion. It's nothing magical. It's not who screams the loudest. It's not who stomps their feet. It's not who takes a position that they don't budge from. It's none of that. All right? It's building advocacy for the deal. And once you build an adversarial situation, you lose. So all the time you want to be building advocacy for the deal. Now, a couple of things are important here. One is that you want to reach a mutually satisfactory agreement. And what is that? Mutually satisfactory agreement is that everyone comes away from the negotiating table feeling 2 things. Number 1, that it was fair, and number 2, they got something for their side. The skilled negotiator gets more for their side than the other guy. Okay? But it's a very subtle way that you do it, and I love doing it. We're talking about face-to-face discussions. Face-to-face discussions would be between the principals, all right? Many times in a real estate transaction, you're not face-to-face with the principal or the decision maker. You're going through someone else, whether it be a real estate agent or someone that is representing that person, an attorney or whatever. So you have to know how to use that person, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. When you do have face-to-face discussions, you never want to back the person in a corner. I mean, I run across things all the time where an agent will call me and say, we got to this point and the person just doesn't want it anymore. Why? What happened? Explain it to me. And what's happened is they've let them back themselves into a corner where they couldn't change their position without losing face. And I can't tell you how important that is, especially in certain cultures that we're dealing with today. We're dealing with multiple cultures, and some of those people would rather die than lose face. And I've seen people walk away from the sweetest deal in the world because it would cause them to lose face, okay? And we'll talk about using a real estate agent and how you use that other party to your advantage. We talk about a process. There is a process that takes place. When you submit your proposal to a person, it may or may not be exactly what they're looking for. And what you have to realize is you can't rush the process. Part of the process is they have to look at what you have. They have to digest it. Quite often, they'll mentally reject it in the beginning. All right? Then they go through a phase where they say, well, maybe it could work. And then they get to another phase where they say, well, how can we make it work? And that's where you want to get to. Because once you get to that phase, then you can start introducing solutions and you can come to resolution and reach a mutually satisfactory agreement. And all you're talking about is issues and problems. That's all it is. You've got certain problems, you've got certain things that you want to accomplish, they have certain things that they want to accomplish, okay? In a typical real estate transaction, many of you buy real estate? A lot of real estate? Yeah, okay. Typical real estate transaction, you've got sellers and you have a listing agent. You're the buyer, or there's 2 buyers, and you've got a selling agent or a buyer's agent representing you, okay? What you have to realize is that your agent has to deal with the seller through the listing agent. They don't go directly to that seller. And vice versa, they come through you, through your agent, to get to you. So what's really important is that everyone be an advocate for the deal, all right? You don't want to give up everything at once, and be careful. I mean, I'm talking against real estate agents, but be careful what you say, because quite often it's transmitted back. So you have to play it a little bit close to the vest. This is what I'd like to offer, so forth and so on. Take this in, let's see what happens, all that sort of thing. There are other negotiations that take place occasionally between a buyer and a seller. And if you can get in that situation where you meet directly with the seller, it's not a bad thing. Years ago, I was working with a national company before buyer agency came into to being over here. And it was just starting out in California. And the CEO came to me and said, "What do you think of this buyer agency thing?" And I said, "I think it's pretty good. It's pretty honest. Because up until now, everyone supposedly represented the seller. The buyer had no representation. And the buyer always thought they had representation, but it wasn't." So he said, "Well, okay." He says, "Well, I'll tell you what. We've got agents asking for this." We had several thousand agents in the company at the time. He says, "Put a couple of guidelines together, a couple of forms." He says, "and we'll pacify them." I said, "Okay, fine." So I started to research it. A year later, I came back. I had 28 pages of guidelines, and I had about 26 forms. And the biggest problem we had was dual agency. And that was where you had the same selling agent and listing agent in the same company, or you had the two agents operating out of the same company. How did you deal with that? So at that point, it was a real problem. It has evolved over the years to where now the broker is the dual agent, and the agents aren't dual agents anymore. But it's still a duck. It still sounds like one, walks like one. Believe me, it's the same thing. So we decided back then, what would we do? Well, we said we would offer the buyer and the seller to sit across the table and negotiate their deal, take the agents out of it, put a manager there to mediate, just so that everyone stayed calm. And when we did that, we never lost the deal, because the people wanted it to work, and it always came together. We found that sometimes an agent can create an adversarial situation by what they say, by their attitude, whatever it happens to be. But that's not what you want. And a lot of agents now have really come a long way in all of this, and I don't see it as much anymore. So realize this, that you're dealing with this other party through another person, and it's important that everyone be an advocate for that deal. When you're putting a deal together, study the deal that you're putting together. Make it as strong as possible. All right? What are some of the things that make it strong? Number one, a large deposit. Have your financials in order. All right? Have a very strong letter from a lender. Have good financials that you're submitting with it. Keep the deal as clean as possible. If you're competing with someone else and there's multiple offers, and we're starting to see a few multiple offers. Anybody been involved with multiple offers? No? You have. You have. Okay. If you're involved in that, keep it as clean as possible. Have an escalation clause. Be prepared to go, the extra distance and so forth. So those are just some of the things. Let me pass out a few notes, and we'll start to go through some of this. Do you want to help me with this? Thank you.
I can do this.
Good.
I'm good
Good.
with that.
Oh, good. Do we have enough back there? Okay. What I've done here is I've put in a few things, some concepts for negotiating, different tips and so forth. And we'll go through a few of these and we'll expand upon them. First of all, satisfy the needs of all parties. That's called win-win negotiating. make sure that you come away where everybody feels like they've gotten something out of this. You don't want to win-lose, because I will tell you that when you get to the final, before you get to the final transaction or the final settlement on it, something is going to happen and you're going to have a problem. And people are less likely to move. Negotiate only with those in authority. This is really important. So often I've seen people start to negotiate with someone who has no authority whatsoever. They can't make the decision. They're not the decision maker. When I go in to buy a car, they hate me, because the game is the salesman comes out and says, oh yeah, I can get this for you. This is a good deal and so forth. Let's just put it down. I'll take it to my manager. And my first thought is, you don't make the decision? Who's the decision maker? It's the manager. Bring him out here. I don't want to go through this. And they hate it. But if you get that guy in front of you, you can make the deal. Because all he's going to do is going to play good guy, bad guy. He's the bad guy. I really want you to have this. I need the deal, so forth and so on. And you know, my manager's a mean guy and all that sort of stuff. Bring the guy out, all right, and make it happen. I had a situation. I was helping a friend of mine buy a car a couple of years ago. And I said, you know, bring out the decision maker. Who's the decision maker? So they told me it was the manager. So he came out and we started talking and so forth. And I says, look, your price is not that good. I says, I can do better. I said, I have a piece of paper in my pocket. And I had a piece of paper folded up, but that's all it was a piece of paper. I said, I have a piece of paper in my pocket with an offer on it. I says that I can get this same car for much less. I said, we'd rather buy it here because this person lives right down the street, would like to service it here, so forth, and establish a relationship with your company. So he says, okay, here's what we'll do. And he matched what I wanted. We had already done our research and so forth. So he said, let's sign it up. I says, wait, they want to go to their credit union to get their financing straightened out. Will you hold that? Will you hold that price for me for 2 days? Yes. Shake hands on it. All right? Now, this was someone from another country and another culture, and I shook hands with him, okay? And I says, we have a deal. He says, yes. I said, we'll be back in 2 days. All right? We came back in 2 days, and I said, okay, we're ready to buy the car. We have our financing and so forth. We can't sell it to you for that. I don't know where he got that from, but we can't sell it for it. I says, have him come out again. He's not here. I said, get him on the phone. I said, because we will walk away, and I'll go someplace else and I'll buy the same car. So get him out here. So they called him. 15 minutes, he was down there. And he says, gee, I'm really sorry, but he said, I don't know what I was thinking, but we can't do this. I said, you shook hands with me. We had a deal. I said, and are you not going to honor that? I said, I understand that people from your country, your word is your bond. And I insulted him so much, in a nice way. He said, okay, sell him the car. All right? A couple of months later, she went back in there to get service. And the salesman came up to her and said, you know what? And this was a holiday weekend. He said, you know what? He says, you got the best deal that ever walked out of here. She said, what do you mean? He said, I tried to get that deal for my cousin on the holiday weekend when we were having a sale, and I couldn't get it. All right? So it's little things like that that you can, you know, use those little advantages that you can get.